Right, let's talk about money. Since 2001, the United States has spent around $14.2 trillion on wars. Yes, trillion. With a T. That's a 12 with 12 zeros after it. It's a sum so vast, if you had that many $1 bills, you could wallpaper the entire state of Texas. This comes from serious people who study these things, like the Watson Institute at Brown University. They've tallied up the direct congressional war appropriations, the war-related increases to the Pentagon's base budget, the care for veterans, and the interest on the debt. Think about what $14.2 trillion actually means. It's more than the combined GDP of several developed nations. The sheer scale of this expenditure is difficult to grasp. This isn't just about Afghanistan and Iraq. It includes operations in Syria, Pakistan, Yemen, and other countries. A price tag that we, the taxpayers, have been footing for over 2 decades. This $14.2 trillion isn't just numbers on a ledger. It represents resources diverted, opportunities lost, and priorities skewed. For that kind of money, you'd expect some stunning successes, some lasting peace. Instead, well, the results have been, shall we say, mixed. So, where did this mountain of money, this $14.2 trillion Everest of expenditure, actually go? A massive chunk went straight into the coffers of the Department of Defense, the Pentagon. Their budget has ballooned since 2001, becoming a financial black hole of truly epic proportions. The Pentagon's base budget itself saw substantial increases justified by the ongoing war on terror. Beyond that, there were the Overseas Contingency Operations Funds, or OCO. This was essentially an off-books slush fund for war spending, not subject to the same budget caps and scrutiny as the regular defense budget. This spending covered everything from troop salaries and deployments to fuel for tanks and jets. It paid for ammunition, bombs, missiles, and all the logistical support needed to wage war across multiple continents. The Pentagon has famously never passed a full independent audit. The department that receives hundreds of billions of dollars of your money every single year cannot fully account for how it's all spent. It's a level of financial mismanagement that would get any other organization shut down, but not the Pentagon. Now, it wasn't just the Pentagon itself getting rich. A significant portion of that $14.2 trillion went to private military and defense contractors. Companies like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, General Dynamics, and Northrop Grumman saw their revenues soar. These contractors became indispensable to the war efforts, especially in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. They filled roles that the military was either unwilling or unable to fill with its own personnel. The number of contractors on the ground often rivaled and sometimes exceeded the number of U.S. troops. The money flowing to these corporations is staggering. We're talking about multi-billion-dollar contracts, often awarded with limited competition or on a cost-plus basis, which incentivizes higher spending. This reliance on contractors also created a powerful lobby in Washington, D.C. It's a classic case of the fox guarding the henhouse. If the henhouse was full of taxpayer money and the fox had a really good lobbyist. Beyond the colossal financial figures, there's a far more devastating toll: the human cost. These wars have resulted in hundreds of thousands of direct deaths. This includes U.S. service members, contractors, allied forces, opposition fighters, and tragically, hundreds of thousands of civilians. Each of these deaths represents a shattered family, a community in mourning, and a future stolen. The number of people injured and maimed runs into the millions. For U.S. troops, these injuries are both physical and psychological, with traumatic brain injuries and PTSD being tragically common. But the impact on civilian populations in war zones is even more widespread and often less documented. Hospitals have been overwhelmed, infrastructure destroyed, and access to basic medical care has become a life-or-death struggle for many. Then there's the displacement. Tens of millions of people have been forced to flee their homes due to these conflicts, becoming refugees or internally displaced persons. The wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and elsewhere have created some of the largest refugee crises since World War II. The destruction of infrastructure, roads, schools, hospitals, power grids, water systems has crippled these societies. Rebuilding will take decades and cost billions more if it ever happens comprehensively. It's a stark reminder that the consequences of war ripple outwards, touching every aspect of life and leaving deep scars on the earth itself. A significant and often underestimated portion of that $14.2 trillion is dedicated to the long-term care of U.S. veterans. The men and women who served in these post-9/11 wars are returning with a complex array of physical and mental health issues. The cost of providing them with medical care, disability benefits, and other support services is already enormous, and it's projected to continue growing for decades to come. This is a moral obligation, of course. We sent them into harm's way, and we have a profound responsibility to care for them when they return. The healthcare needs are immense. The Department of Veterans Affairs has seen its budget swell as it tries to cope with the influx of new veterans requiring lifelong care. Beyond the medical care, there are disability payments for those whose service has left them unable to work or with diminished earning capacity. The peak costs for veteran care often don't arrive until decades after a war has ended, as veterans age and their service-connected conditions worsen. This is one of the hidden costs of war that policymakers often downplay when they're making the case for military intervention. It's a debt that we owe, and it's one that keeps on growing. Now imagine for a moment, just for a glorious hypothetical moment, that this $14.2 trillion hadn't been poured into wars. What if instead it had been invested right here, in the United States? Think about our crumbling infrastructure. Our bridges are aging, our roads are potholed, our water systems are in desperate need of an upgrade. With even a fraction of that war money, we could have rebuilt and modernized our essential public works. Think about the transformation. We could have high-speed rail connecting major cities, making travel faster, cleaner, and more efficient. We could have a smart, resilient energy grid, capable of handling the demands of the 21st century and incorporating renewable energy sources on a massive scale. We could ensure clean drinking water for every community, replacing lead pipes and upgrading treatment facilities. What about decarbonizing our energy system? The threat of climate change is, to put it mildly, rather significant. Transitioning to a clean energy economy requires massive investment in solar, wind, geothermal, and other renewable technologies. Instead of funding conflicts abroad, we could have been funding the fight for our planet's future. Proponents of high military spending argue it's good for the economy because it creates jobs. And yes, building fighter jets and tanks does employ people. But investing the same money in clean energy, healthcare, or education creates more jobs. Studies show $1 billion in education or green energy generates more jobs than in the military. Military spending is capital-intensive, with money going into expensive machinery, not jobs. Shifting investment to high-speed rail or renewable energy creates jobs in construction, manufacturing, and engineering. These jobs build essential civilian infrastructure, contributing to the public good. It's about choosing to build things that enhance life, rather than things designed to take it. So why does this enormous spending on war persist, even when the results are questionable and the costs are so devastating? Well, a big part of the answer lies in what President Eisenhower famously warned about: the military-industrial complex. This is the powerful alliance of the armed forces, the defense industry, and the politicians who support them. Defense contractors make enormous profits from war. They spend tens of millions of dollars every year on lobbying Congress and the Pentagon. They donate heavily to political campaigns. Their goal is simple: to ensure that the government keeps buying their weapons and services. It's a system that is deeply entrenched and incredibly resistant to reform. Alright, after all that doom and gloom about trillions wasted and opportunities lost, it's easy to feel a bit despondent. But it doesn't have to be this way. The fact that we're even having this conversation, that people are questioning this level of spending and its consequences, is a sign that change is possible. It starts with recognizing that national security isn't just about military might. It's also about the well-being of our own citizens and the health of our planet. We need to fundamentally rethink our national priorities. Imagine if we approached investments in education, healthcare, infrastructure, and clean energy with the same sense of urgency and commitment that we've shown towards military spending. Imagine if national security was redefined to include resilience against climate change, pandemics, and economic inequality. Shifting even a fraction of that $14.2 trillion towards these domestic needs could transform our country for the better. This isn't about being naive or neglecting genuine threats, it's about finding a better balance. It requires courage from our political leaders to challenge the status quo. It also requires an engaged public that demands accountability and advocates for a more sensible approach to how our tax dollars are spent. We have the resources, we have the ingenuity. The question is whether we have the collective will to redirect our vast wealth and energy towards building a better future here at home.